What's up, guys? Welcome back to the machine shed. I've got some light work to do here today, but I figured I'd go ahead and make a video on it and do a little bit more close-up stuff, hopefully, with the head cam thing on the GoPro. But today we're working on cylinder heads. We're going to disassemble our cylinder heads so they can go to the machine shop and get pressure tested. This is pretty easy stuff, and it's fairly straightforward. A couple of ways that you can do it, and I'm going to show you those. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, to kick things off, here are the tools we're going to be using. Here we've got a clamp style valve spring compressor that wraps around the head, and basically one end goes on the bottom of the valve, the other end goes onto your retainer right here. You squeeze the handle, it pulls the spring down, and then you've got a magnet. Use your magnet to pull the keepers off, and you've got your valve disassembled. You can pull the valve out and you're good to go. Then you've also got these style, these don't, I use these on, diesel stuff and also used them on a lot of small block Chevy stuff. You could definitely use this bar style on this. You just put a bolt down through there essentially, and that'll give you a prying anchor, and you can pry down and pull your keepers out and disassemble them. These don't work as well because a lot of times your angle's not quite right, and sometimes you gotta like pry and give it a whack with a mallet, and overall they're just not as good. But these do have a place too if you have to pull your springs off while the motor is on. These work really good, or while the cylinder head's on, these work really good because you can pressurize your cylinder with air and anchor this down. Boom, pull your valve spring and upgrade your valve springs while the head's on without having your valve drop down into the motor. So anyways, other stuff that we got too, I've got a little box here, and on this box I just wrote P and D, which stands for passenger and driver. And then we've got 16 holes, and these are going to hold our valves when they come out. We want to reuse all of our valves if we can. Really take a close look at the exhaust valves, and if they're shot, we won't use them. But hopefully we can reuse everything. We'll clean those up. But we want to make sure the valves go back into the exact same holes they came out of. Then the next thing we got is our drill. And on the drill, we've got just a little stone bit, and I'm going to use this to make a mark on the cylinder head here because these cylinder heads are identical. And there are some differences that you could see, like the threads on that one, you can tell that that's where accessories are bolted up, and the threads on this, you could tell that those haven't had bolts run in them. But once they get cleaned, you might not be able to tell. And so, for that reason, we want to make some type of defining mark. You could put, anything you want really, but I'm going to just put a P on this head. That lets me know it's the passenger. I won't even mark that one because we've got one marked, and then when we come back with our valves, we're going to know exactly where everything goes. So we're going to go ahead and get this set up, and let's start pulling these valves out. Actually, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and mark this right away. Just get it out of the way. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to run my drill. All right, there we go. Now we got a P. Now we know that this is our passenger side cylinder head. This is aluminum, so we don't need to go too far. That gives us our orientation though, and we're good to go. All right, guys. So we've got our clamp going here, and I'm just trying to adjust it so that my handle is close to the bottom when I'm gonna squeeze it and actually compress the spring. Because if you go too high up with the handle, it's too hard to actually squeeze it. So let's see if I can demonstrate that here. See, like right there. Oh, okay. So that was just about, too much, but it worked out. So there we've got our valve spring is compressed. You can see the valve sticking out there. We're centered pretty well on that. Okay, so we've got our valve springs compressed. You can see the valve sticking out there, and our keepers. So now we're just going to grab our magnet, see if we can grab those keepers. You get them both? Okay, so we got them both. There's our keepers, and we'll just put those in a pile right here and release our spring. Now we've got our springs released, our retainer and our spring just fall out. And then let's see if our valve wants to come out nice. Okay, she came out nice and smooth. That's actually good. A lot of times when you pull your valve out, you're gonna feel tons of tension and it doesn't wanna come out, and that's usually not a fun sign, because that tells you that your guides are, they're probably gonna need some work. But a good machinist can take care of that really, really quick too if they are gummed up or whatnot. Sometimes you can get away with just cleaning them out with a tiny little brush, but we're not here to talk about that. We've got our first exhaust valve out here, and we've got our head orientation set. This is the passenger side. We've got P there, and so there's our first valve. We'll just, boop, there we go, in the hole. And move on to the next. Here we go. Now, once you get your first valve done and you get your device set up, it goes pretty quick. There we go. On to the next one. There, we're missing a keeper. She didn't want to come out. Come on, buddy, get out of there. Gotta wiggle them sometimes. Grab a little screwdriver too. Grab yourself a long flat blade for these guys that don't want to come out. Especially if you got big gloves on like I got. It's 20 below outside. There we go. Now our springs aren't gonna go back in. Our retainers we're gonna reuse. But our springs, we're going to upgrade these. Orientation of the springs and retainers, I've found, doesn't really matter. I've mixed them up many times, same with keepers. They're not, like your valves. Okay, and so now pulled my exhaust valve out, or my intake valve out there. That one came out relatively easy too. Let's see. That's looking good. Okay. Exhaust valves don't look too bad. We'll run a brush on them, really clean them up. Okay, and we'll just keep moving along here. Center your pedestal on your clamp. Boom, compress it. And this moves right along. This moves along real quick. Especially with stock, springs. Once you start getting some springs with really high seat pressures, it can be a lot tougher. And I am going to get a little container once I get all these keepers out, and we'll put these keepers into a container. Okay, they came out really, really smooth. That's a good sign. Once you get towards the center of the cylinder head, these are small heads, so you don't really run into the issues, but with big diesel heads and stuff, it can get kind of annoying at the center of the cylinder head. because your device is, or your tool is kind of stretched out there, and oh, we're missing one. Where'd you go, buddy? There you are. And that's why these clamps are so nice. You can just run right through this whole head and get it disassembled and get it done with. A lot of this can take longer if you don't have the right tool. We feel a tiny little bit of resistance on this guide here. Little bit, not a lot. Definitely be cleaned up. Pop that in there. Yeah, these heads aren't much trouble at all, actually. There we go. Sorry for the shop light right there, but you know, the lighting on the camera is not the best in the machine shed here. It actually is really bright in here, but I need to put in some more ballast. That's going to happen very soon too. I just put 4 new ones in, and I need about 4 to 6 more. And you can see there our clamp actually come off of the retainer right there. We'll just recenter it there. There we go. Pull this one out. Ooh, nice and smooth. That's what I like to see. Now I actually do have a smaller fixture that goes on the end of this, but this one is, we're not quite needing it for this job here. This is doing okay, but they do make a smaller one that you use on your 4 cylinders and stuff like that. Okay, look at that. Wonderful. Gotta love it when they just slide right out. Because trust me, sometimes take stuff apart and they don't. I just did a power stroke last year. Power strokes are pretty notorious for heating intake and exhaust valves. And let me tell you, it was horrible. But everything's fixable. Usually, hopefully. Okay, so let's get these set up there. Get this last valve out. All right, and so now we've got our passenger head. We've got all of our valves out. Now's a good time too to pull valve stem seals out, but we're doing budget on this one. So these valve stems, we're actually just gonna leave them in there and we're gonna send it how it is. We may end up changing them depending if the kit, my gasket kit that I order comes with them, I'll change them. If not, I'm just gonna send her. I don't care. Don't bother me none. These spark plugs, we'll grab those out later. Let's keep working on the heads. Those are actually, on all your cylinder head bolts, these are all junk. You can't reuse these. These are all torque to yield, so you don't want to reuse those. And they're too cheap not to replace. And you know, you can upgrade with ARPs and stuff like that. But you cannot reuse these because, especially if you're going to turbocharge, you know, you're just asking for it. It'll only be a matter of time before you lose your head gasket, or it just starts leaking and you lose compression and it just sucks. So we're going to replace all of those. I actually might try out, I use ARPs on pretty much everything I've ever built, but I might try out some cheaper studs actually with this motor and see how those perform, because I've heard some good stuff about some of these cheaper studs that come out. So this one, I'm gonna flip this way. Obviously this is our driver's side, but then we can kind of see more of the action from the spring side of the valve when we're doing this. We dropped one. That's okay. I think we're going to get a set of those LS6 springs for this. Ooh, nice and easy. I've heard good things about those. But what my kind of plan is that once we get our bottom end built and we decide what camshaft we're going to run, I'm going to see if I can't maybe talk to comp cams and get a whole kit from them. Because we do need new lifters for this motor too. The lifters were so, I mean, they were just gone, stuck in the bores. I guarantee you this engine probably ran like 1,000 Bs in a aluminum can, probably ticking away like you wouldn't believe. But so anyways, the lifters are shot. We need new lifters. We need a cam and valve springs, and that will actually kind of wrap up the motor. Just keep plugging along with this. And what I like to do is get your left hand on that, your fixture here, and then kind of hold it with your finger. Check to see that you're centered on the back of the valve, and then compress. And if you don't have your tool centered, it's actually much harder to compress the valve spring. And the keepers and the retainer, they kind of have a little memory. So when they go, they kind of break free, you know? And that's what you want to do, is break them free. But if you're off-centered, it can really be tough sometimes. Not really with these valve springs though. They're not very strong. These don't, I mean, you could just tell by compressing these that they don't have a ton of seat pressure. I don't know what stock, you know, LS 5.3 valve spring seat pressures are, but I can tell you it's not very much. And that's why if you're gonna rev one of these pretty good, it would definitely pay to do a springs, because if you put a big cam in, it's not going to matter if those springs can't get back, or if those valves can't get back to the seat. You're just going to lose all your power. and it won't rev, which is never fun. Oh, I heard a keeper drop. There you are. Oh, okay, so there's something interesting I'll show you guys too. So as we're going along here, I just felt that the fixture on my tool here had come loose a little bit, so let's tighten that down. Watch out for that. Oh, look at that, they both fell out. Let's pull our last valve out. Those all came out nice and easy. Okay, and let's take a look at what we got. Put this up. Boy, those aluminum heads are just so light. They don't weigh anything. Okay, so we've got all our exhaust valves and intake valves here. Passenger, driver. We'll just go ahead and set those up there, and we're gonna actually work on those and fix those up. All we got to do is pull our plugs out of our cylinder heads, and these go to get pressure tested. Once they're pressure tested, while they're getting pressure tested rather, we'll have them clean them up a little bit. We're not going to hot tank them, but we're going to make sure that they're square, and we'll clean them in the parts washer and stuff like that at the actual machine shop and clean them up nice. But yeah, I just wanted to make a quick video on that. If you don't got one of these, get yourself one of these. That's, you can see how easy it makes it. And then I'll show you too, once we go back in with the valves, once we get the heads all cleaned up, we're gonna clean up the seats, and then I'll show you how to lap the valves by hand. That's something I always like to do too on any motor, just lap the valves in nice. Gives them a little extra seal, especially if you're reusing valves, which actually, take a look at these valves quick. It looks like this intake, or this exhaust valve here, is just about the worst. I can tell you by looking at all these intakes, they're all good. You see this one here is coked up, so this one and this one, probably the two worst. But the thing is, we have to take a brush, a wire brush, and we'll get it on a drill, clean up the back sides of all these valves, and clean up the front sides as well, and we'll see if there's pitting. You know, once you get that pitting, that's what'll make you scared, because you could potentially drop a valve in a high heat situation. But these actually look good. I'm actually excited because none of them were jammed into the guides, you know, which I've ran into many times. You go to try and pull a valve out of a cylinder head, and by the time you get the valve out, the guide's toast, you know. So this looks good though. This is cool. And yeah, this is a quick short one. That'll be about it for today. Tomorrow, we're gonna be dropping all of our parts off at the machine shop to do all the stuff that we need to do. And we'll go from there. So until next time, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you soon.